All right. We have quite the crowd. Well, we have quite a few things to talk about today, so let's go ahead and get started. Rao, are you ready and available?
Yes, I am. So in terms of the mainnet, the versions remain roughly the same. We have an observer running 11.0 Alpha 2, but other than that, we're running 10.2. And I think on the testnet, we are running tests with the block merge version, and I believe the team is right now looking into a slashing issue that's going on there. So we don't have the complete analysis on that yet, but they're looking at that. And on testnet 2, we're running the hard fork version of block merge. And I'll speak to that a little bit in detail in just a little bit. So the main focus for the current sprint, we're still working on some block merge items, but we have also started, and we're also working on hard fork 1 changes. So those two have been going on for a while. And additionally, we picked up or started work on hard fork 2 planning and also hard fork 2 items. Isaac has started implementing some of the hard fork 2 items that pertain to the POS changes, and he's been at it for a little over a week, I believe. As you can see here, so there are many streams that we're running parallelly. There is the leaderful block merge, which is what will go on the current mainnet once all the tests are done and everything is working fine, which means this is like a round robin scenario, block merge in the round robin scenario. Then there is the leaderless block merge changes that will also go through the testnet 1 and be on the mainnet, even though they may not be operational until after the hard fork 2. The reason we're doing it this way is any code that has the opportunity to be tested with the current code base all the way through to the mainnet, we want to push it down that path to discover any interactions. The only things that we would hold back from testnet 1 are the ones that really need the hard fork. And that's why we're separating some things that may not be operational immediately until we have the synchrony constraint 0.67 and the leaderless, that's the leaderless merging going on, but that would be after the hard fork. So then there are tasks that relate to or that will be able to be on the mainnet only after hard fork 2, and they're being tested on testnet 2. So those are 3 different streams of, if you want to think it that way. Block merge changes, all very interrelated, obviously. But that's what is going on with block merge. I do want to speak to basically how the content of work that we need to do has expanded quite a bit in block merge as we were trying to resolve those issues, either because of interactions, whether it be with Casper or whatever else, or it may be that some of the previous choices that were made by the previous teams on the design choices, we had to revisit and come to a conclusion and change them in some cases. So now the net effect of all of that is that the code is going to be much cleaner and clearer as we move forward, and then some of the errors are being corrected. But of course, the impact on the schedule is visible, I believe, to everyone. We are behind on this for a little bit, but like I said a couple of weeks ago, we do see the end of the tunnel, and we definitely will be updating the milestones based on what we know now. So that's kind of where we are on block merge. And we do have the performance numbers that I spoke to a couple of weeks ago. It was 7x to 10x without the removal of the channels map. And I think removing the channels map was giving us another 30% type of boost on that. So that's where we are with performance numbers for now. And I'll speak to performance-related items also in a little bit beyond the block merge. So that's the block merge streams, those 3 streams. And then we have the hard fork 1 for balances. Will has been working on this, and this is nearly complete. He has a preliminary balances report, but he has some 3 wallets where the balances are do not seem to be matching. So he's looking into that issue to see if it's a problem with the reporting code that he has written or whether there's something else that he needs to resolve. So that's ongoing. So that's another stream of work. And then 2 other things related to hard fork 2. One is planning, looking at all the items that we need to do, analyzing the impact of those, analyzing the interactions among those tasks, and then specifying what needs to be done, and then reviewing the designs, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of work there that needs to be done and is being done in that stream with planning for hard fork 2. This again has the potential to expand the scope, but we are being very mindful to say, let's do only what is needed for the hard fork 2, because the more things you do in one hard fork, the more there is the risk of bugs and interactions among different changes that we're making. So we're trying to minimize that. And one approach we're taking there is to think of a soft fork approach, or design a soft fork approach in such a way that we can do. We don't have to lose state when we have to make some substantial change, but we have a way of transitioning or migrating the state over from the previous to the next version, which is an easier or correct way to do it, because you don't want to go with a system like this that's likely to last several years or decades. You don't want to have the approach that, every time you're going to do a clean slate. So the hard forks should be reduced or minimized as much as possible, and you should have a very strong and safe soft fork approach. And that's kind of something that we're working on. So there's a lot of work here that needs to be done. And then, like I said, Isaac has started implementing some of the RevWall changes, and I think primarily that's what he has started on right now before he gets to the POS changes. So that's where we are. And another stream of work that's been going on is performance improvements. We have, first of all, there's block merge based performance improvement. And we are identifying, and then there are a few PRs, couple of PRs, like the one that Tomislav has put in for replacing the Scala structures with vectors that gives small improvements in performance. There is other analysis that is being done to see where, I'll skip down a little bit on this to this issue. So Tomislav has created the issue 3413 to report metrics for performance improvement in a coherent fashion and identify which paths offer the best return on effort for performance improvement. So that's another thing that's being worked on. And we have things like replacing protobuf with cat and proto, which we identified as a sure winner. Seems like it not only will increase performance, but it should also ensure data format or data structure compatibility between the Scala client and a potential future Rust client. So the Rust client effort came from one of the community members that has been working for the past past few months creating portions of the Erlang interpreter and portions of the node in Rust, and has demonstrated a substantial performance improvement. Now, to take that effort and then actually turn that into a working deployable mainnet Rust client is a significant effort. There is a lot more that needs to be done, but what he was able to demonstrate is that, hey, there are some opportunities for performance improvement. So now we're taking a look at that effort and saying, okay, how can we leverage portions of that effort or portions of those insights to say, maybe there are pieces of the Scala code, the Scala node that can be replaced with something Rust. So that conversation is ongoing, and we will put some plan together there to see what can be done in that realm, even as there might be a future goal or a goal of a future Rust client that the community can develop under Jerry's leadership. So that's all being considered also in the performance improvement arena. It's not just performance improvement, it's more than that, because when you have clients in multiple languages, the efforts will be mutually synergistic and mutually helping improve the node in general. So I think that's a worthwhile effort. It's just that we're trying to balance the near-term goals versus what is the long-term potential or possibility there. So those are some of the things that are going on in the performance improvements section. So that kind of speaks to the scope of all the work that is going on, which I mean, when you consider the current team size, it's an enormous amount of work that is going on. The other thing I want to speak to is testnet 2 and when it might be available to the community to start working with that hard fork version of the future net. So right now the team is using the testnet 2, and they're reconfiguring, given all these streams that I just talked about, they're reconfiguring the feature branches and then rebasing the code appropriately. And in doing so, they're having to upgrade the testnet 2 quite a bit. The other thing we're doing is we're trying to run performance tests on the testnet 2, and for that, sometimes we had to bring up a whole lot of nodes and a whole lot of CPUs to get the numbers and then shut them down again. So with all of that, I would say testnet 2 right now is not quite comfortable for the community in general to work with. But we should be done with the tests in a little while, in which case, whenever we're done with that, we should be able to make the testnet 2 accessible to the community so that the community can then either verify performance or start working with or testing their code on the testnet 2, which will be the eventual mainnet version after the hard fork. So that's the other work that is going on. Will's balance PR is already in there, and already spoke to the couple of bugs that he's trying to resolve. Let me see what else I want to speak to. I think most of these other items I have already spoken to. I do want to say we anticipate adding about 1.25 to 1.5 resources to the core development team in the next few weeks. And these are folks that have already worked with some aspect of the code base, and they have demonstrated both their competence and their commitment or interest in the project. So that's where we are, and we have one other offer out. Haven't heard back, so I don't quite know what the situation is yet on that. So we will be expanding the team a little bit to over the next few weeks to work on some of these items. Separately from the ecosystem standpoint and the dApp developer things, that's the other thing I did not really mention here. But that's also a focus, is to say, how do we improve any debugging support for the users? And in fact, Tomislav has, I think Tomislav will have a PR in there to report user errors back to the users in a more sane fashion, so that they can debug there. But there's a lot more that could be done to make the development easier from the developer standpoint. So there is a need there to put some effort. And as the ecosystem develops, there will be a lot of opportunities for developers to be available as resources as the projects come along. So we're beginning to collect or collate a list of who is available, can they do front end or back end, or what kind of work they can do, that sort of a thing. So that if people want to do projects, there are people that we can tap into, the resources that we can tap into to be able to quickly get going on those things. So that's the other side of the developer expansion. That's not quite expansion, but just creating that ecosystem and being ready to take on projects that come along. So that's those are the things. And I think that's mostly what I want to cover today. Are there any questions, comments on any of this?
I just want to say that, we really are committed to having a diversity of clients. So when we're looking at the Rust work, it's not to replace the Scala client. There may be sometimes when it might be useful to take a component of the Scala client and replace that with a Rust component, if that's in the same way that LMDB is written in C, and we make a call from Scala to C. So that's one way to think about it. But we also would love to have a full Rust client, but we recognize that unless that's appropriately resourced, it's going to take quite some time to. I mean, even if it is appropriately resourced, it will take some time to get it to production standards. But we fully support multiple clients. I would love to see how a Haskell client fares. I'd love to see, even a C++ client for that matter. Or a Go client. All of those are reasonable kinds of efforts, and we hope that the community will pick them up, and we're doing what we can to make that easier and easier. Any questions about that? Okay, moving on. The board met yesterday, and there is interesting and good news. I know that a lot of community members have come forward to me recently asking if Rev will be available again. So the board met to discuss that topic, and we can talk about that on the closed door session, but not here. With respect to the hiring, I will also mention that we have initiated a relationship with a recruiting firm called Turing, who seems to be it's a promising beginning. So we'll be looking into the kinds of development resources they might be able to help us find. But our initial conversations with Turing were quite promising. So looking forward to taking that a step further. They are very cognizant of how much talent there is out in the world, and how if one is careful, you can find good talent in all kinds of places from, South America to Eastern Europe. So I think they've really got their finger on the pulse there. Any questions about that?
Yeah, you mentioned the Friday closed door meeting, which is the Q&A session, which is open to members who have registered. But just a reminder, that's going to be 1 hour earlier this Friday, which is 10 a.m. Pacific instead of the usual 11. So 10 a.m. Pacific this Friday, which is, I believe, 5 p.m. GMT.
Mm-hmm. And, that's a one-time only thing. I happen to be traveling, and so it makes sense to move it up by an hour. All right, Daryl, you ready to give the community in review?
Yep. Thanks, Greg. And hey, everybody. So here's the community week in review for Thursday, May 13th to Wednesday, May 19th. Last Thursday in the governance committee, Ian queried how to deal with the rev locked on DEXs when it can't be tracked. He also brought up thoughts around fee structures compared to how Ethereum is doing it, EIP 1559, and the need to work this out as soon as we get our first shard up. Missing piece of the puzzle as we head towards block merge. We don't quite have the economics down with how the fees are going to work. So that's what we discussed on the governance committee. Also on Thursday at the DApp Developer Working Group, they finalized reward payments through April. On Friday's Climate Coordination Cast, we had a guest named Rochelle Gribble. She's a visual artist and astronaut in training. We also discussed recent environmental debates involving NFTs, blockchain, and Elon Musk. Ian also spoke about the Apple Epic lawsuit and how it could affect utility tokens. On Saturday in the RChat call, RChain Pi RGov, Personal Shard, and CapTP. On Monday's Casper Stand-Up, this week's Casper Stand-Up covered the abstractions involved in the proof theory of OSLF. On yesterday at the Communications Working Group, I couldn't host the call, so Steve H. hosted it, and I believe they mostly worked on live updating the website with Raphael. You can check it out at rchain.coop/#roadmap, or just go to rchain.coop and scroll down. And if you can get that link and spread it, I think that would be great, because it's just a really good overview of where things are at and where they're going. They also discussed developing a regular newsletter. This morning at the RChain Active Member Hangout, Gary brought up the economicspace.agency, and discussion went towards Steve Ross Talbot's concepts around RChain integration with Nextcloud. Jim Weitzcarver talked about his friend Tom and walked down memory lane, and the conversation went to the EISE system, Electronic Information Exchange System, in the 70s. Talked about Howard Rheingold and Jim's influential peers from that era. Jim also mentioned that Raphael's brother Paul is now involved with the UI team for RGov, and Jim gave an update of where RGov is at. And that brings us to now.
Thank you, Daryl. Any questions for Daryl? Okay. I want to mention a big shout out to all the people who piled on the recent tweet storms. That was great. So cumulatively, we got over 70,000 impressions delivered through Twitter about RChain in the last 7 days. So that's a huge spike. So I really appreciate all the people who liked and retweeted those tweets. The one that seems to be getting additional momentum, gaining some momentum, is the open letter that I wrote to the Tesla CFO. So if you happen to see that, please give that some attention, some likes and retweets. That's also leapt from one social media to another. So Steve Ross Talbot shared it on LinkedIn, and apparently it's catching fire on LinkedIn as well. So this is all good news. perhaps maybe we'll make a Medium article out of it, and or some Instagram thread. But this is great, and I think the timing is perfect for us.
Yeah, would you like the co-op to post that on Instagram?
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea.
Okay.
Wonderful. Okay, is there anything else we need to cover in this call? Any questions, comments, concerns from the community? Very good. Thank you, one and all. I really appreciate the ongoing and sustained engagement. Please stay safe, and see you on the other side.